Alright, so here's a battle against Aldieb or Aldieb, I'm not exactly sure. He leads out with Infinite, and I lead out with Togekiss. And he gets the fake out and I decide, well, I'll just stay in an air slash, hopefully it's 2-hit KO, or I get the flinch. And he has a sash, which I expected. And I thought he'd switch, but he goes to the Fire Blast, which really does a lot of damage. I thought maybe, you know, a 2-hit KO, but about 60% damage, but it really did a lot of damage. Almost KO'd, and I decided, well, I'll go for the air slash and try and finish it off. But they switch into Vaporeon, and I decide to stay in, hoping that he would just take me out straight away. But it didn't work out that way, and I thought he'd just keep trying to stall me out, so I decided to go into my Raikou. But as soon as I do, he does go for the Surf. And I thought, well, Vaporeon will protect here, because they'll be scared of what I'm going to do, so I'm going to go for the Calm Mind here, and hopefully take it out. And I go for the Thunderbolt here, and it KOs, and I don't know why they didn't switch. I'm sure they had options, as shown later, to switch into. They could have taken a hit, but it doesn't really matter. So anyway, he switched in Electivire, which is why I was really surprised he didn't switch, because he could have switched, did this thing in and got a speed boost. And I decide, well, it might be Scarf, so I go into Bronzong, but he goes into Infinite. Oh, I go into Bronzong, and then he goes into Infinite, but I go for the Earthquake and KO. So I'm in a pretty good position here, 6-4, but I don't really have much for Gyarados. Once it's got a DD or two, I don't really have anything that can really stop it, because Zapdos is vulnerable to the Stone Edge. But I bring in Zapdos anyway, and he goes to the second DD, but then he switches out, which is pretty smart by him, knowing that he wouldn't be able to KO. And he goes into Electivire and gets the speed boost. And I don't really have a wall for Electivire. I have Bronzong, but a lot of Electivires pack Fire Punch or Flamethrower, so it doesn't really wall that well. So I decide, well, I'll go for the Stealth Rock here, because I assumed he didn't have Fire Punch, which is the reason he wasn't using it. So he goes into Gyarados, and I go into Zapdos here. And then he goes into Kingdra, which he probably shouldn't have done this early in the match. Probably should have gone back into Electivire again. But he goes to the Draco Meteor, and I thought this thing might have been Specs, maybe, because it did a hell of a lot of damage. It almost KO'd. Or maybe it's just the Stab, Draco Meteor, EV's, Nature, and everything. And I go for the T-Bolt and finish it off. And here, I wasn't sure exactly who he'd go into, but I assumed it'd be Electivire. And I go into my Bronzong, and he uses the Fire Punch, so that's a good prediction. Fire Punch does over half, and with the Leftovers recovery I might have been able to live one more, but since he got the burn, no chance. And I decided, well, I'll just leave it in. I doubt I'll need it. So I lost Bronzong a bit cheap there, but such is life. So I bring in Snorlax, and then they bring in Dusknoir, and I wasn't sure what they'd bring in, so I used the Whirlwind, and Gyarados comes out, which was sorta good, and I wasn't sure whether to stay in or go to Zapdos here. I decided to go to Zapdos to play it safe, like just use it as a fodder, but he goes for the Taunt, so I wasn't exactly sure what to do here, but I thought he'd go into Electivire to soak up the T-Bolt, so I decided to go out to Snorlax, hoping it didn't have Cross Chop, but then I decided, well, it might have Cross Chop, so I go into Togekiss just to Death Fodder and scout what it has, and it used T-Punch, so I assumed it didn't have Cross Chop, and I go for the Shadow Ball there, which does average damage. I don't know why I brought this guy in. I probably should have brought in another option, but it doesn't matter. So I bring in my Heracross here, and I predicted the Gyarados, so I went for the Stone Edge, which KO'd, which was really nice because Gyarados was starting to cause a bit of a hassle, and if Zapdos had gone down, that would probably have gone through my team. So he's got 2 Pokemon left, but he's got Dusknoir and Electivire, which are both both had trouble with. So he goes to the Earthquake here, and I was really hoping he wouldn't have Will-O-Wisp, but I sort of assumed he would. So I decided here to go for the Crunch, and I probably should have Whirlwinds it here, but it doesn't really matter. And I decided, well, he's probably going to burn me now if he does have Will-O-Wisp. So I thought, well, I could Crunch or I could Whirlwind. I decided I'll Crunch because if I Whirlwind, Electivire will just come out and will probably take me out anyway. So I tried to take on Dusknoir as far as I could, and I assumed that he'd probably Pain Split here, and I probably should have gone into Zapdos there, but it doesn't really matter. And I decided to Whirlwind him out into Electivire finally, and I just thought at this point, well, Snorlax has done a good job, so I'll just let it die, let it be fodder, and get my Heracross in, try and clean him up, and he stays in, thankfully, and I go for the Mega Horn KO. So at this point it's a Heracross and a Zapdos against a Dusknoir. And here I thought, well, I'm trapped. I cannot go into Zapdos because it has barely any HP left. So I decided all I can do is stay in Mega Horn. And Mega Horn did actually alright damage. I was really hoping he'd burn me, but this guy's obviously a smart battler, so he decided not to burn. And all I could do was just hope to do as much damage as I possibly could and get rid of the Dusknoir. And at this point I was wondering if I could win this or not. If he had, I realized he didn't have an Ice Punch or an Ice Punch, so it would come a little bit easier for Zapdos, but it would all be about the first switch in, and if he could survive the initial Shadow Sneak from Dusknoir, we'd be in a pretty good position. And I decided here I'd have to go for the Roost, there's no other option. And he goes for the Shadow Sneak, and it does very little damage at all. I could have taken 2 or 3 of those, but I decided to go for the Roost and play it safe. And here I think, well, he can't touch me, so I've pretty much got the battle won here. Just don't stuff it up. I decided to go for the Roost despite the risk of being hit by an Earthquake, and he goes for the Pain Split. And I decided, well, T-Bolt should be a 3 KO, so I'll just keep T-Bolting and chip away and eventually get the result. And this T-Bolt here gets a crit, which probably just sped up the inevitable. But, you know, this was a great battle, so, good game, you know, it was terrific, and I hope to be uploading more. I'm on holidays now, so I should be able to get a few in a week. Tell me what you think, guys, and peace.